Hello! Welcome to Why Not Both? My name is Pam Schaefer, and I'm a musician and therapist in Los Angeles. Why Not Both is all about how our multiple passions inform our identity, and this season we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine and produced by Laura Studeris. If you like what you hear, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform and come spend time with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, and that is both on Instagram and on Twitter. For this week's episode, we were thrilled to get to virtually spend some time with Perfume Genius. I hope you enjoy our interview. Welcome to Why Not Both?
Hello.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut out for a second there.
Oh my God. See, my Zoom is possessed. I think it's because I use it so much. Sometimes it just...
computer like that would do something.
Oh yeah.
Closer.
It's like lightly haunted. Not seriously haunted, but just like playfully haunted.
Yeah. That's my favorite kind.
It's like a ghost that just does like tiny things that are absurd as opposed to anything.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I have a lot of that in this house.
Oh yeah? Where are you living?
I'm just making that up right now. I'm projecting it. I feel something, but it could just be like I'm hungry. But instead of, thinking I'm hungry, I just think there's a ghost with hunger energy in the living room doing little hunger things.
Just planting snacks around that you find below the couch cushion.
It's like ghost treats.
Who needs Scooby snacks when you have ghost treats?
Yeah.
I feel like this is what quarantine has done to all of us. We're like, am I hungry or is it the poltergeist?
Oh, for sure.
How have you been? Well, it's funny because I used to ask people like, what is it you do? And, questions like that were normal in the before times. Now I'm like, so how's time working for you?
Well, it's very strange. Because I released a record. So usually that involves me being very much out of the house and out in the world. And I kind of adopt a certain kind of energetic like armor in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have that now. But I'm still promoting a record and performing and singing and stuff. So it's very strange. Like I'm just home, just very, very, very home for like a week. And then suddenly I'm somewhere where I'm supposed to like gyrate and sing.
What's that like to summon that energy? Because you're doing live streaming, right, for that?
Yeah. It's always difficult, especially like if you haven't done it in a while, you don't know if it's gonna return or what you did to make it even available, so it's always nerve-wracking, but it's even more strange when it's too, there's no audience, and I don't know. It's nice to have context. Like we did one live stream where we did it on a stage with lights and smoke and full band, and it felt like a show. There just wasn't anyone there. But I tried to channel that energy. I was like, well, how can I use that as fuel or make it even eerier or stranger or I don't know, heightened in some way? But there's other situations where it just feels like I really want people there.
I was going to say, because then in a weird way that actually does sound like genuinely haunted because you're performing to like the ghosts of the audience that you would imagine being there.
Yeah. And for that live stream, like the biggest one that we did, I tried to pick a theater that had energy. I'm talking a lot about energy today. That's okay.
You're cool.
I wanted to pick one that had a haunted, personality that was like an emptiness that was energetic.
Well, yeah, because it's different.
I was just thinking that empty CVS, actually, that would be kind of creepy.
That would be creepy in like a really like dystopian way.
Yeah, maybe that's the next one. I was trying to think of something that would be empty and have no energy. But I don't know. I'm too woo-woo right now. Like everything I'm thinking of, that definitely has energy. So.
Well, what if it were a space that had been built but no one had been in it yet? Would that?
Yeah, maybe like a kind of like conference hall, some sort of like really condo-y hotel-y conference hall.
Yeah, like one of those ones that they say is eco-friendly, but kind of look like someone got drunk with really large
Yeah.
Legos.
That has energy, but it like made me shiver a little bit in the bad way.
That has more like threatening aura energy. There's been a lot of those buildings going up around LA where I'm just like, who designed this? What happened there?
Who's living in them?
I'm
Like,
so
I
curious
kind of
about
know
that.
vaguely. I have like a picture in my head, but yeah, it's really
Yeah,
strange, especially when they don't fit in with the rest of the place. You
yes,
know,
yes, because
yeah,
the energy of neighborhoods is so specific that it's like when you start building, like if you have like those beautiful like California bungalows from the 20s and then you build one of those things in it, it looks so weird.
yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, I don't get
It's
that.
shitty. They're usually like really poorly built. At least like the huge condo complexes, they look really fancy, but there's something, like empty and like flat packy, IKEA-y about it.
Yeah, like it has that kind of prefab look, but not in a charming way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you were talking about like channeling the energy of performance and the energy of spaces. It is really interesting to think of who would be in those spaces because you would know who would have been in that theater. And that's fascinating to me that you chose that theater in specific, by the way. When you were talking about that, I was like, oh, because that's one of the problems. I don't know if you have this when you're watching live streams, but sometimes I don't have the context for where someone's performing, or like that's actually why I haven't live streamed at all, is that like my context would be like in my living room.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know if that's a context that I want to perform in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, it's very, I don't know. I guess if I had like a separate space in my home that I would do that. But then yet again, it's imbued with different energy.
Yeah, or just like some sort of separation, and any kind of separation really. And it's just hard to conjure that up when I feel so like homebound and so like you know just hanging out with my dog. I mean, I'm doing a lot of other weird shit too, but it's like home shit. It's the weird shit I do for work.
Can I talk on the podcast all about your dog? Do people like, I want to know more about your dog, but also what are you doing at home?
I mean, I was always doing lots of press on the phone and stuff like that. So, and I've been doing this long enough that I can get over the strangeness of just like immediately meeting somebody and then having to talk about vulnerable stuff. So it's just a lot of that. It's just not in person.
Right.
Did a lot of press in the beginning. There's a lot of things where they're like, they want me to take a picture of myself in my house. I don't know. I was really into doing the videos where I had like hours of makeup and preparation and like, I don't know, just some sort of build up to it. So I felt like the kind of person that wanted to get their picture taken. It's hard to point the camera at my own self in here, but I'm doing it. I'm trying to figure out a way to do it and not try to make it feel like I wasn't doing that, Like how can I find inspiration within the actual confines of everything instead of trying to fit all inspiration into this situation?
Well, and there's also like a time to be observed and a time that like it sounds like you don't want to be the object of observation. You're like, but I'm just here living.
It's weird. I think I'm just older now too. And even if I would have put this record out and everything would have been as it was, I think I would have been a lot more sensitive and aware of everything, just because I've been doing it so long that I'm not terrified to play a show. So I can actually look at the audience and think of them as like, these are people watching. Before I sort of would black out. I was so anxious that I was like, I just have to do this, And so I was just like powering through it. And I did that for years. And now I am used to everything. So I'm nervous because it's always nerve wracking, but I also have a little bit of awareness while it's going on. It just doesn't feel like I'm just wilding out. If I am wilding out, I know it. and I'm aware that it's being witnessed.
That's heartening to know as someone who does black out during performances, because I get so anxious that I genuinely don't know what happens.
Yeah. And there's times now where I am very aware of everything and it feels really harmonious and really rewarding in a new way. And I think that'll be even more so once I can actually like have an audience. But just even with the band, just even with like the set, the band, my body, the bodies, like I feel a little more present.
Do you feel at all that like that your recent involvement in dance has helped with that at all? Like that kind of like feeling embodied. When you were talking about that, I thought of that, of like when you do engage in purposeful movement and things like that, that then that can bring you back to your body and take you away from that like dissociative aspect that sometimes comes with performance, I guess.
Yeah, very, very much. I mean, I always went somewhere physically, but before it felt like really rebellious and almost like I was trying to get out of my body for an hour on stage or whatever. I even wrote a lot of songs about that idea. And now it feels like being really in my body and really at the place we are, but it still feels as magical and as like transporting sometimes as when I was trying to literally leave somehow spiritually, And I don't know, that felt it was very strange to discover. And I think I found that through the dance. I didn't realize that I needed that so bad, or that it was going to feel as magical and fit in with sort of the way where I come from creatively, that I thought was a very internal, isolated place. I thought that's where I had to be in order to make things and to feel good and to feel free, and then to feel good and free, but in my body and with other people in, I mean, I just pushing people around like in an office chair, but in a really good dramatic way or something. I just think that would be some key to connection, but it definitely is.
Isn't it strange? I was thinking about that, and it's like the inspiration and connection comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes like the exact converse of where you think it's going to.
Yeah, I mean, it threw a lot of things up in the air for me. Like I've always felt like I'm very emotional, but I don't think I am, or I am, but I don't know what they are. I thought I had a handle on it, and so I think the dance and being around people kind of conjured up real feeling for me, and it was very clear to me that I didn't know what they were. I didn't have a handle on it. Like I think I'm very emotional. I just don't know
what those
what they are.
Well, an emotion can be expressed in so many different ways. Like there's emotion like you could name it, and then there's emotion like you're describing that you just feel in your body that doesn't necessarily have a name.
Yeah, and I think that's what was happening in the dances, that they were kind of, if they weren't being named, they were at least having room to come out and move around and like show themselves a little bit.
That's fascinating. How did you end up kind of like falling into that? What happened?
Kate, the choreographer, Kate Wallach, who choreographed the piece, she just reached out. I think she saw me like arching my back in a picture, and she was commissioned to make a work, like a dance work that involved live music in some way. I mean, there weren't a lot of rules, but I guess if there were, that was what they were. And she saw that I could dance, or at least that I moved. And so we just started talking. We were both from Seattle and had some friends in common. And it just very quickly became something I knew I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't know if I could. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew I wanted to do it. And I had never done anything like it before. I know it's really scary in a lot of ways. And a lot of the first like rehearsals were really terrifying because they were exactly what I was worried they were going to be. I thought like my idea of something really terrifying is just any sort of improv class, and that's what it was. She was just like, well, let's just try something. And I was like, okay. And so I'm with all these professional dancers, and I just put like one of my demos on, and I'm rolling around.
You're like, this is where we're at.
But at the same time, it's why I decided to do it, is because I mean I'm not very self-motivated, in general, but I have conjured up enough discomfort for myself in order to make good songs. And you know, I feel like all the things I've done have been better when I push myself to be uncomfortable, but it's getting harder and harder to do the older I am and the more I've done it. So I have to make really deliberate decisions to like get out of myself.
Well, yeah, especially when you found success in certain ways, it's hard not to get like calcified, to be like, oh, I know that this works, so I'll just do this. And it's like,
oh my God. And honestly, I'm just going to do that eventually. Like we were talking about tour and stuff, and I was like, can I just like sit on a stool and do like an evening with Perfume Genius, like 7 nights somewhere? And I don't want to sing anything like high energy. I just want it to be really calm. I just want to sit there and sing, you know. My God.
Up, have a mug of tea.
Surety. But hopefully I won't. I will do another. I will keep like pushing it. Wanda, do you hear her?
Hi, Wanda.
She's on high alert because my boyfriend just went out of town for like 10 days and thinks she can.
Oh, she's protecting you.
So she's in a mood.
She's like, where's the other member of my pack?
Yeah. Or she's just ready to fight or anything.
I like that, like, I'm already analyzing your dog's fear response and you're like, oh no, it's fight.
Well, she loves drama. So it doesn't really matter what kind it is, she's into it. You know.
What kind of dog is she?
Chihuahua.
Oh my God. Adorable. I love that Chihuahuas have like such a sense of just like selfhood that they're like, have you noticed me? I'm here and I'm going to take care of things. And you're like, you're the size of my foot. And they're like, I don't care.
That's why I love them too. They kind of just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And if you what you want them to, it's like a compromise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I kind of love that because I'm the same way. But I respect it.
Small dog vibe is so different than I grew up with big dogs. And it's funny because then when I encountered small dogs, I was like, oh no, this is like a totally different creature. I love them. They're like, they crack me up.
They get a bad rap though, because Wanda's not like super shaky or like yappy.
Mm-hmm.
She's just, I'm projecting. And whenever I talk about my dog, I get really like, oh God, please just do it. Just be gentle. Just talk about it like, don't be too intense about it.
Oh, well, I think that I don't really trust people who have a dog and treat it casually. I'm like, do you even like dogs?
Well, that's why I don't like really well-behaved dogs or like dogs that just do what everybody says. There's something kind of off-putting to me about that dynamic. So when people have these dogs that are just sort of, they don't seem to have any
zest about them.
It bothers me. And like, why do you have this dog just to sort of like project on and have them? I don't really understand that dynamic.
I have zero chill about dogs, clearly. Mm-hmm. And I went over to my friend Suka, and her roommate's dog like immediately started playing with me. And apparently the dog is usually really shy, but she's only 2. And I got so excited because she was actually kind of like naughty and teenage rebellious. Like we were playing tug of war and I made like a funny squeaking noise, and so she jumped on my shoulders and licked my nose when I like threw her toy. And her owner was like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Because I'm very small, so the dog's like my size.
I'm glad you're small. Like, I'm small too.
Yay!
Dogs. I come from a small family. I think that there's power in being small. I like really tall people too.
I find that a lot of my friends are really tall, and so photos of us together are really funny.
Yeah. I dated a guy that was 6'8" for a while.
What?
And yeah, one time we were walking down the street holding hands and people laughed at us. That made me like Chihuahua energy. I got very defiant and very like
Exactly. Oh my God. I would have been like, I do what I want.
Yeah.
I will climb this person like a koala on a tree. Okay. No idea.
What are you doing? You're sitting there being normal sized. You know?
My first partner is she's 6'4", and so I'm barely 5 feet tall.
Respect and support that. And energy. That's energy. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's a very odd reaction though, that people are just like, oh, you're just like fun human sized.
I think I get the opposite, honestly. I think people think I'm smaller than I am.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't really bother me. Like my mom is 5'2", 5'3", but she seems tall. You know, everybody's very surprised when they actually notice that she's small, littler, you know. But everybody always thinks I'm much smaller than I am. And or much more fragile, much, I don't know. That maybe that's just what, but always like in school there's like Mike's here and they're like, who Mike who, and they're like little Mike, which is fine. But in their head I think that they're thinking very little. When it's just
That's so funny. And like thinking about even like dance and physicality of expressing yourself on stage, I think that some people's perceptions might be skewed based on even how you shape your body. Like I have noticed that like, I guess because I don't mean to, but I wear things and I'm not in context of other people. But if you see me just standing alone, you don't really have a context for my height.
mm-hmm.
And so even though you have bandmates on stage, like oftentimes, like when you see press photos, it's of you. So like people might not have a frame of reference, I guess.
Yeah, it might be. I like that though. I don't mind it. One of the dancers in the company, Laura, is really, she's small too, but she seems really big. She dances big. She has a big energy.
That's,
Yeah.
I love also that like in the context of dance, you get to experiment with like big energy, small body and vice versa. Because I think that people erroneously think that if you are tall, that you do have big energy. But I found that it's like the big dog, small dog thing where sometimes like,
Yeah, it's not attached to that at all.
yeah.
I loved that about the dance. I loved the everybody that I, you know, because I danced with all of them and everybody had like a signature vibe. Like I don't know, like a specific thing to attune to that's very different than attuning to like your friends or your boyfriend or sexual or whatever. The whole different like physical um, thing to try to harmonize with. And I really loved it. I think what I was talking about, how it's hard for me to actually name my feelings. It was a way to not have to talk, not have to do any naming, but harmonize and connect and like feel things out in a way that was like really satisfying to me. Because sometimes I feel like I can't articulate myself very well
I love
in
that.
life.
And it sounds almost like when you're playing with fellow musicians and it just gels and you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to necessarily tell someone where you're going. You can just kind of go along with them.
Oh, I live, I live for it to the point where like I hate rehearsal. I just want everybody just to let's just go there. Let's go to that place and see what happens, you know. But I forget that, you know, practice and rehearsal and work, that kind of aligns you with that. It opens that up for you.
Yeah, it's like you have to
So,
put in that discipline sometimes to get to there. Like even if you already like kind of mesh with someone, it's like on the
yeah.
specific songs, you just have to like work it until it becomes an effortless playing with each other.
Well, and ultimately, you know, it's for other people. They're going to be watching and listening. So
Right.
I might feel amazing, but I got to make sure that everybody else does too. And like I can just sit there and just love everybody, and that will be enough for me for like an hour. But I need to like communicate it.
Yeah, it needs to be like maybe like legible to other people.
But I'm so protective of that I'm always thinking that, you know, I don't want anybody to be upset or to I hate criticism. You know,
Oh.
like I get very protective of that, and I think I misjudge um, rehearsal sometimes when, you know, even in the studio, like recording my own songs as I write them all, I'm just
Mhm.
babbling. That's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to talk.
Yeah, that's how this works.
I'll write songs by myself, and I'll bring them into the studio. I'll be so protective of how that world feels to me,
Yeah.
and I get very. It's hard. It's hard to bring them out, you know, and bring them involve other people, and I don't know, but I found a way to.
I was gonna
I'm
say
not
like
really
letting
necessarily
yeah.
tied to how it sounds or looks or anything. It's just like an emotional thing. that I'm like really sacred about.
Well, and those are the things that are like those kind of like inchoate emotions that you were talking about, that it's like it's very vulnerable to let anyone into that space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things. I was talking with a friend recently about this, of like that she was saying that she was waiting to feel less afraid to like start a project, and I was saying that like I 0% feel less afraid. I just kind of like figure out how to like let the fear hang out with whatever it is that I'm doing.
Oh, 100%. Like, I don't think it's ever gone away. I have just gotten used to doing things in parallel.
Yeah. That it's like that vulnerability of like, oh, this is like my sacred emotional space, and I'm letting someone in, and that's terrifying, but I also am letting someone in because it's beautiful. And I know that something interesting is going to come of it. And it's like living with that and knowing that like being, kind of like being courageous artistically in a way isn't that you're like, I'm going to put everything out there. It's more like, this is terrifying. Here you go.
Honestly, I think doing it and making things, you like beat 90% of everybody else.
Yes.
Every part of yourself, like just committing and doing it is way more than half of it to me.
Yeah, because and like you said about criticism, that's actually how I know that I'm on the right track with something that I've done, is weirdly like when someone doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah, I
like,
don't have a
oh.
problem with someone not liking my work. Sometimes I actually really get off on it in a weird way. I don't know why. I do not like it when people are cruel or
Right.
superficially mean, or like if I feel like somebody understood it and still didn't like it, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
But if I feel like they didn't understand it, then I don't really care about what they're saying.
Yeah, it's the whole thing of like not taking criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. It's like
Yeah.
they don't get what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's not for them, literally.
Yeah. I heard that facial expression and it was great. Yeah, and knowing that like it's so strange sometimes thinking about like artistry and even putting things out. It's like you're never going to be universally acclaimed. There's always going to be something that you're like, no, that actually wasn't for this person, and that's okay.
Well, and I've had people that it was for and they didn't like it, and it didn't bother me. I mean, it would make me want to pay more attention next time, carry that like like advice.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Well, and there's a difference between, like you said, like when people are being cruel versus when someone is giving you, I hate the phrase constructive criticism, but I think that it is valuable when someone's like, oh, I get what you're doing, but this is why it didn't land for me.
Right. Right. Well, it's so hard to create an environment where that feels like that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's so hard to like the formula of it. I don't know how much of it is my defensiveness, how much of it is my fear that like if I let any criticism in, I'm going to stop doing anything. Or how much of it is that it shouldn't be said. Sometimes it's I have a hard time with that even with people. Well, like my close relationships.
Yeah.
But it's you bring so much to everything, so much like old shit, new shit, stuff that you're taught, lies that you told yourself, lies that other people told you. You carry around all this stuff that you're not even aware of. And so if something's really deep and it's talked about, like it's like all of that flares up.
Yes, it's having like those kind of one of my friends who's a hypnotherapist was teaching me about this kind of like underlying beliefs. It's almost like background scripts that are running that we're not super duper aware of consciously. Yeah. But then occasionally they just get like kind of touched upon. And so those can be those like flashpoints where all of a sudden you're like really defensive and things like that, where it's like, oh, did that actually touch on something bigger? It's like lurking beneath there. And I guess like finding people that you trust to touch on those things and know that you're still safe.
I mean, honestly, we're talking about all this, but I'm thinking about it, and I've really surrounded myself with people that work very differently than me, and think about, process and think about things very differently, and it makes it really difficult. But honestly, I feel like it makes my work better, even though it's really uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not, that's like a very positive thing that I'm saying about these people. But like my boyfriend Alan, he loves rehearsal. He loves practicing.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's where everything opens up for him, and he finds that place that I kind of start from. And
Oh.
you know what I mean? And so that can turn into a fight, or it can turn into like a real harmony. But everything that is made from it that we keep is because of the harmoniousness. Like he thinks about things that I wouldn't think about. Like I'm worried about how it feels, and then he's like, "Well, but it sounds bad," And then, but also I can get him to sort of relax and like move into a freer place that is ultimately more beneficial sometimes too. So.
Well, and it's that discomfort that you talked about, that like discomfort and pain are very different, where like one is injurious, where the other usually actually indicates that you're going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. The dance performance had none of that. I felt like zero tension.
Wow.
It was very bizarre. It was fully like a circle. Everybody had input. Everybody made it, from the very start, like the person that did the production design, costuming, everybody was in the room from the very beginning before any music or movement had happened, which is very bizarre to me. But it was
what was that like it was bizarre, but were you able to ease into the bizarreness of it? Did you like it?
At first I just was very I was just doing it and was like that, it just felt very foreign, but then I sort of adapted to it and really loved that way of working. And I also just got to see people work. I don't know, like the dancers, they were moving the way that I think about writing. So it was just and we were together all the time for months, you know what I mean? For like 8 hours a day.
Right.
And so it became very like summer campy, or even like rehab. When I went to rehab, I was terrified of rehab. I didn't talk for like a week. Wow. But by the end of it, I was like, I will read this passage from this line, from this thing. And I was, sharing information with everybody and just like giggling and like prancing around, it's like, I really, I almost become like a little kid in places where I feel really safe.
Yeah.
So I get so amped up, and that very much happened with the dance. I was just so like thrilled to be around people that I really trusted, and that I felt like we're going to be tender to everything. That there's going to be a sensitivity involved the whole way, even if it wasn't going well or somebody wasn't understood or whatever.
That's I wish you could see me. I just did I put my hand over my heart. I was just like, oh, that's so sweet. Well, yeah, it's like, it's trusting that people are going to be there for you, and that connection is there. And then you can be childlike. It's like, if that connection isn't there, you wouldn't want to open up like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and plus we were just doing really weird shit, and nobody was like questioning it at all. And I loved that. I would like to be like that. I mean, by the end, we didn't really need to rehearse the dance anymore, but we still were doing a bunch of rehearsals. So we were just doing really weird, it's just like crying, looking at a car outside. And then I would look over and somebody was doing the same thing. And I was like, yes. Didn't make any sense. But and then we all just took a nap on top of each other for 4 hours. And I'm like, this is what I want to do like every day.
Well, when you have that synergy with people, like I found that very infrequently, but when you find it, it's like one of the most beautiful feelings in the world, where it's like you said, it's doing the weird things, but in a way it's like, it's not that weird.
Well, and I loved the drama. I mean, there's always performance and fantasy built into it, because we were making something and we didn't know each other that well, like if you wrote it all out.
Yeah.
So, but I don't mind that being an element. I like that element.
Well, and in a way it's outside of the mundane, because
it is like, you know, in a way, a controlled interaction because the purpose is clear. You're there for working on the dance. But that kind of structure then freed you up to do everything else, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, it's like almost like an alternate timeline or something. Like we're just in a different world.
Yeah, and like none of you are helping the other like take out the trash or something.
No, I'm not into that. No.
You have such vivid facial expressions through your tone of voice, and it's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like loving that.
No, I am with my boyfriend. I yelled at him, and I made a rule that we can't talk about anything real after 7. I don't want it. And he's like, what is real? And I was like, table, chair. I just started like naming stuff. I was like, we can't talk about it after 7.
Only the fantastical. You're off duty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm like, maybe now I'm wondering what my time would be that I would stop talking about realness. Like the fact that you can just set that limit, I'm like, that's glorious.
Right. Well, I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to be followed. I definitely made a big fuss. So, where the chihuahua energy comes back again. Because I'm just, saying a bunch of shit doesn't mean it's going to happen. But,
I'm like, speak it into reality. Speak it, make it thus. Oh my goodness. If I'm not mistaken, you were also working on a book, right?
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I can't wait to see it. I mean, because it's all been, we made the book, but I haven't seen it yet. It won't feel like a real thing until I see it and hold it.
Right? When do you get to do that?
I think pretty soon. I don't know. It's too real for me to know the date.
I was like, are we on the real hours? Like, it's not 7 p.m. yet, but I don't want to press.
Then Camille, the photographer that did my record cover and all the other art, like still imagery surrounding the record,
mm-hmm.
I had been following her and loved her for a long time. And I had wanted to work with her for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I had a lot of ideas, and I knew that she would have her own, and that it would build a whole world,
Yeah.
And so she lives in Paris, and I went over there, and we shot so many pictures, and I felt like I wanted to share it in an official way and have some sort of memory of it that wasn't specifically tied to like the album cover or use the images used as press pictures and stuff like that.
Right. What was it like were you shooting with that intent, or like, I guess like just thinking about how projects spiral, or at least they spiral for me, I was like, was that the intent going in, or did it just sort of take on a life of its own?
It wasn't, but I had, it wasn't, but I have been a fan of hers, and she's made books of her images before. And I look at them in that way, I look at them as living.
Got it.
That sort of like area. So I knew that the things we made, I was going to like as pictures. We did a lot of still life and stuff. Well, she did. I didn't. But we did a lot of other things that weren't just like me with my shirt off, So, yeah.
I was curious about the crossover of feeling embodied in dance versus being embodied when you are like the subject of a photograph.
It doesn't feel that different to me.
Yeah.
I know it does to other people. No offense to other people. Like,
on behalf of everyone else, I'm so offended.
Honestly, I think the reason it does feel different to me is just because I've been doing that. I mean, I've been getting my picture taken for so long, and I'm always bending around and shit. So I'm just used to it. More the thing. I think the reason it doesn't feel different to me is just because I try to conjure the same like feeling in my body. So
Yeah, because sometimes it's so fascinating to me when people say that like models' jobs are easy because in essence, I genuinely don't think that they are, because trying to conjure that emotion in your body for a still photograph is actually very challenging.
I
Not like
think so. I mean, at least it is for me. I wonder though if they're all thinking they're doing that or if they're just sitting there. I don't know.
they're
It's
just
so
chilling.
beautiful that they can just like sit down. They're like, oh my God, check that out. Me, I'm like, I have to contact God and I have to drape myself over this thing perfectly.
Yes, and I think that also seeing the outtakes of photo shoots is very humbling. Where like I don't know about you, but I'll be going through contact sheets and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a goddess. Oh my God, I'm a potato. Like, it's like second to second, it can be very dodgy.
Well, it's just like everything just has to line up.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody involved, everything involved, every little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do not think I would be a good photographer at all.
I admire photographers. I admire people that can see kind of, I guess, like see not the potential, but kind of see the beauty and angles in just about anything. Like one of my friends is a food photographer, and the way that she photographs food, I don't even like most of the food she photographs. Like I'm kind of a lazy, picky, weird vegan.
Mm-hmm.
But like she took this photo of a burger with cheese and egg, like things that I don't even eat. And I was like, oh my God, that looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like people who have a talent for seeing that, I respect that so much. I'm just like, oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, me too. Even my manager, Brian, he takes all these pictures everywhere we go, and we're at the same place, we're looking at the same thing. And I'm like, how did you get that picture? It's just some I don't really know. I can't describe it.
Yeah. When I think about like different art mediums, like that's actually why I love talking to people I mean, it was totally self-serving that I created this podcast. About people that work in different mediums. I find it fascinating because I'm like, how did you end up kind of like putting emotion into that, and how do you see things that way? Because it's very different than I do, and I'm like, oh, tell me about it.
Well, and like I asked Camille, I said, how do you because to me photography feels very technical.
Mm-hmm.
You have to manage all these like technical things, but then the things that she would make are so soulful and warm and spiritual seeming to me, and like eerie. Like how do you get a handle on the technical part and then maintain that, or do you even think of it that way? It's the same like the rehearsal thing to me. It's like, how do you let in stuff like that and not have it overwhelm it or get in the way of it? Not everybody thinks of things that way, but
I mean, I guess it's like when you're tracking and recording that you could get lost in like the minutiae of what instruments you're playing or how you're producing it, but like in essence you want to channel the feeling of the song.
Mm-hmm. Well, then those things kind of, I guess, become emotional when you look at them if you use them enough. And I think about like when I'm like recording my demos and stuff, like I'm putting a bunch of, it's like on the computer.
Yeah.
But I think of all these little sliders now as kind of like emotional things. Like I know if I move it up, it's gonna feel like this. So
Yes.
that's maybe it just turns into that eventually.
Well, and I like tactile things to use with a computer. I don't know if you like them as well, but like controllers and keyboards and things like that. Like sometimes I'll just do stuff like actually just on my laptop, but I prefer to control my laptop with external things that I can touch for that reason.
Like that. That's cool. I've been using the same laptop since the very first record. So it's like, I don't know how old that is, 10 years old. It's really old.
Heck yeah.
Version of GarageBand from like 10 years ago.
I still have my 2010 MacBook that I definitely will track demos on GarageBand. I was like, I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, hey, friend. It doesn't even zoom. Its name is Gizmo. I'm zooming on my other laptop.
I even tried to like look something up online recently, and it's like, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
You need to download something in order to go on the internet, the new internet.
That's where Gizmo's at, where it's like I still have my interface for him and like love tracking demos. But yeah, he can't Zoom. He can't use Google Chrome anymore. Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, technically that computer does still very much work though.
Yeah. I've tried to relearn like another program or just involve that in like part of me being, trying something new, or maybe it'll lead to something different, but it's just maybe I have time now. So maybe I'll try to do that.
I mean, it's kind of fun to just like, that's how I learned Ableton, is literally just taking time to mess around on it, not even with the intention of making songs that were functional. It was a lot like learning a new instrument, frankly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, where it's like when you first start, it sounds real dumb and you just keep going.
But I have that when I first start, even with all the stuff that I've been using. So to add that on and then also learning, because I always go in and like it takes me a long time of making all these fragments or shitty songs in order to get to the place where I'm like, okay, I'm on to something.
Not
that it's good, but at least what I'm supposed to be doing.
That happens when I write at the piano too, where especially like during like this whole time soup of quarantines. I don't know if you've been writing during this time, but it's like I'll have an idea bubble up and I'll start working on it and it'll just kind of be like,
yeah. I have all this time, like I could, but I'm like, I don't have time for this. It's really
There's so much time that I just don't have time for it.
Yeah. I'd rather do something that causes me anxiety and does nothing for me.
Love that. Oh my God. Yeah, I found that like trying to catch those ideas has been harder. So it's like, it's been a very weird time. And I feel like especially as artists, we were pressured at the beginning of this to be like somehow ultra productive. And I was like, why?
I mean, it might eventually, I might be working on something like underneath all this. I mean, that's how it feels to me. Like whenever I'm done making a record, my boyfriend's always like, you have not done anything for 2 months. But I have, I think, in the background. Like I need to repair and like all this, I don't know how to explain.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's like you go back in your chrysalis in a way where you're like, no, I have to be in here and be kind of mushy and then I can emerge again as a butterfly, but like, hold up a second.
Yeah, so I'm hoping something like that is happening.
I'm sure it is. I feel like the time frame of all of this, like we're all going to emerge at some point. What that point is, I don't know, and I don't know what it looks like, but I also know nothing lasts forever. So logically, something else will happen.
Something else, yeah.
I think it's going to be fascinating to look back and then be like, oh, well, what happened after? It's just that right now we're in the mushy period.
Right. In so many ways. Very mushy.
It's been very, very strange. Like I said, at the beginning of when I started this podcast, I was like, I'm going to have set interview questions. Now I'm like, what is time? What are words?
Yeah. I mean, that is one thing that is kind of fun, is that everybody's there, Yeah. I think that I kind of like how, I don't know, even socially, I feel like people are just sharing more and are not afraid of sharing like complicated, icky, messy stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's there. And so it's kind of normalized.
And I think that that's a good thing. Like that's the one thing that really dispels shame, is to actually share stuff. And when everyone sees that everyone else is actually just like a delightful, icky mess, sometimes you're like, oh, okay.
I mean, also, I think it's like, I'm not being super social, but when I am like going and seeing people, everybody's trying to fit in everything. Kind of like when you call your mom and you haven't talked to her for a month, so she tries to be like ultra mom at you for like the phone call. I feel like people are doing that socially, and it's kind of fun.
That's hysterical, because I was raised in a Jewish household, so I'm like, what's that like that you don't talk to your mom for months? Like your mom doesn't call you multiple times a day? I'm confused.
Well, it does now. I talk to my mom like maybe once a week, but there have been, especially on tour and stuff, I didn't talk to her for a while.
Oh my God, we did teach my mom how to text. That has helped.
Yeah.
I agree with you though. Like I went to my friend's, and so I had like a very socially distanced glass of wine in the yard. But like what that turned into is literally we talked until like 5 a.m. because we hadn't even seen one another in person in months and months and months. And it was so lovely because usually I see this person at events, which is great. I mean, we're friends outside that, but there's also the layer of like, oh, we're at an art event, we're at a gallery thing, we're at this and that. No, it's like, fuck it, we're having wine. There's a roof. Where it was this very much like there was just a lack of pretense and just a delight in seeing one another.
This is nice.
It was so nice. I was just like, can it be like this all the time? I mean, I do miss going to galleries, but also like more like roof wine, please.
Yeah.
I don't even like wine. Really, the enticement was just the roof, frankly.
A roof. You like a roof?
Oh, yeah. I had maybe half a glass of wine. I was really enticed to drink it because it was from a goblet from the Madonna Inn, which is one of my favorite places in the whole world.
We were not far from it. Where were we? We were in where were we? Morro Bay or something with all these sand dunes. But I knew that the Madonna Inn was close.
You must go.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Like, that's why I love it, is that it's like frivolous and gaudy and nonsensical, but it takes that frivolity to a level at which it loops to serious again somehow.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah. Where it's like, I've never been to a location where it's like, this is absurd to this degree, and we are invested in it wholeheartedly.
I like that. Hold on it for sure. I was sold before. I'm double sold.
Well, because you're in California now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Where is it? The Madonna Inn? It's like is it by San Luis Obispo?
Yeah, it's I think it actually is technically in San Luis Obispo. It's right in between LA and SF. It's like 4 hours north of LA, and I want to say like 3 hours south of SF on the 101.
We'll go. Are people going to hotels? I think they are. Someone just told me they went to one and there's like no one there, and so they had to pull to themselves. I like that.
Oh my God.
Telling me that, then other people are saying that, and then they're all gonna go.
Well, that was like how everyone from LA decided to try and go to Joshua Tree all at the same time, and then I felt really bad for everyone who actually lived in Joshua Tree.
I tried to do that. I couldn't find. I thought that they like stopped Airbnb. For a while, I was just like, I have to get out of the city, and I just want to be somewhere open.
Yeah.
Energetically open. But we haven't.
Well, the energy of the city has definitely, I mean, I stay inside most of the time, frankly. Mm-hmm. The energy of the city has been really strange throughout this whole thing. Like when everything first shut down, I actually kind of liked the eeriness of it. Mm-hmm. Because now everyone just seems very on edge. Like whenever I leave, people seem just very, I just made a face of me.
Yeah, even the driving. I don't drive, but I watch from the passengers. People seem crazy, but everybody's crazy before, to be honest. But maybe it's a little heightened. Yeah,
like LA is one of those places that it's like, it's intensely chill, but chilly intense. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What was that? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, I'm done. What are you going to say?
I was curious what it was like coming here from the Northwest.
I like it here. I like the Northwest too. I like the pace up there more, and I like the air there. Mm-hmm. And the kind of light that it has. Mm-hmm. And I miss my family and some friends up there. But I like how it's nice out here. I mean, it's on fire. But it's like warm. There's something really, I mean, I've never experienced that, where you could just like go outside if you felt like it and not have it be a big production. It's very wild. And just like leaving doors and windows open and like going inside, outside, having them almost feel all the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like all the food. We weren't living in a big city. We were living in Tacoma, like 40 minutes south of Seattle.
That's where I went to college.
Yeah, I love Tacoma, but I love here that I can get like anything weird kind of food or normal kind of food. I don't know what I'm classifying those as, but like
I just remember there was
delivered. The Tacoma, yeah, we kind of just would eat the same thing. We found like a couple places that we liked, and so we would eat the same thing unless we were cooking.
That's so funny. Yeah, because in LA, it's like coming from here. I remember I was really stoked when I actually did find Thai food in Tacoma, because I actually did wonder that. Like when I went to college there, I was just like, oh, I'm gonna get to explore new food, and then I was like, you stupid LA kid.
Well, but they have teriyaki in Seattle and Tacoma, which I really miss. I ate teriyaki, and teriyaki in a way in the Northwest is very different than everywhere else. Like it's almost like not fast food, but it's a quick food, and it's very simple. It's very pleasing to me, pleasing to my system. My taste buds. I miss it.
It kind of reminds me of our version of like just grabbing a burrito from one of the
very much like that. That's like the Seattle version of it to me, anyways.
Yes.
I ate teriyaki for lunch like 3 or 4 days a week. I would even rotate the places I went so they didn't think I was like.
You didn't have like a teriyaki problem?
I miss that almost more than anything.
Oh, and that's so interesting what you said about like that you can just go outside without it being a production.
And I think that's why I like it. Here's the novelty-ishness of it still. I mean, I adapted to it pretty quickly. I still don't like the sun. I don't like being directly in it, but I like being like next to it.
Proximal.
Yeah. But see, the Northwest, it is more beautiful there in the summer than it is anywhere else, but the rest of the year is kind of...
yeah. It gets kind of grim by like April, May when you're like really ready for it to be spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious how that will inform like how you end up writing. Like I know that I ended up writing differently. I mean, I also was in college, so of course I was like filled with collegiate angst. But there's a big difference when you can just sort of stroll outside and there's not that boundary. Whereas up there, like sometimes you're like, no, I'm just gonna chill in my attic because it's 30 degrees and raining. I'm not going to go outside.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I wrote this last record in LA, and in Tacoma, I had like an attic that had my piano in it, and I could go up there, and I felt like no one could hear me. People downstairs, neighbors, anyone. And it felt, I mean, that's what I want, you know? So I was like screaming and just wilding out. And when I wrote this last record, I could hear my landlord, I could hear my neighbors. You know, we lived in the front house, and there were people living around us, and I could feel them, and I wondered if they could hear me a lot while I was singing. And that, I think, changes how I write a little bit, but who knows? I mean, maybe I could be completely isolated and have written the same record. I don't know, but at least I think that that's an ingredient that's involved. Yeah,
it's the energy of being witnessed in a way when you're writing, especially it's so vulnerable when you're writing like vocal lines.
And the last record was kind of more thoughtful in how I was singing. It wasn't a lot of like just me screaming, and you know, the record before had a lot more kind of wild stuff. But this, to me, I sing like the lowest note and the highest note I've ever sang on this last record. But it's a lot more like, I don't know.
I like that my brain's like, oh, maybe you were in a different place. And then I was like, Pam, he was literally in a different place.
I was deliberately trying to write songs in a very specific way. I was like, I was writing it. It gets so wishy-washy to talk about.
Well, it's weird talking about songwriting sometimes.
I write songs. I was trying to sing as a singer and write songs and make them very song-like. I don't know how to explain that. Before, I just felt like I was just kind of winging it and doing things and trying stuff and, you know, seeing what's going on and experimenting a lot. And I still did a lot of that, but I also was trying to have a kind of command and kind of step into it in a different way with the last record. Like, if I'm a singer, these are songs.
These are songs that I'm singing.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, yeah, because there's a difference between like that kind of visceral expression and then that approaching it as like a craft. And I think both are valuable. Like, I don't think one's like right or wrong, but those are really different approaches.
Yeah. Well, it's fun, I guess, kind of like what we're talking about, doing that, but maintaining all the energy of being free and just trying stuff and experimenting. Seeing those can all exist at the same time.
Yeah. And thinking about what you're saying about dance is that it's like, in a way, even though you weren't focused on like the structure of rehearsal, just the being there, the 8 hours a day is what enabled you, it sounds like, to reach the points that you did.
Oh, yeah. I really miss it.
Oh.
It's really strange to be doing that and writing a whole record that's about like sex and like bodies and physical stuff. And then just it, and you know, I felt really healthy and I felt really able and capable and connected, at least more than usual, and then have that kind of be like illegal. It was very weird.
Yeah, I was saying to someone that I feel like discussions now around COVID are much like, it's like the risk reduction of like having safe sex conversations, but like around breathing.
Yeah.
It's like, how many people have you breathed around? What was your proximity to them? How many days ago was it that you were breathing around them? How's your breathing now? Where I'm like, well, really anyone in like the queer, poly, or kink community is like, we got this. Let's just apply it to breathing. But it brings like all new levels of complication and thought to social interaction and even like being embodied in public.
Well, it's just always seasoning everything.
Yeah.
So I will feel comfortable. I will feel some sense of normalcy in wherever I am, but never fully, because it's not. So it's very strange. That's the same as like I'm performing and I will feel like, oh, I'm playing a show, but no one's here. Or I'll feel like I'm talking. It's like, oh, this feels like it used to, but it's not, because we're, you know, we can make each other sick.
Yeah. And it's so strange because before all of this, it's like when my podcast guests were in LA, like, of course I would invite people over, or I'd meet up in like, one of my friends has a lovely living room in Silver Lake. If someone was like further east, like I would go over there, but it was so lovely to get to just like meet people and record live and like have tea, you know, like normal people things. And it's so strange to me sometimes to know that like I'm so close to so many people, whether they're podcast guests or my friends or whomever, but it's like, once you hang up on a Zoom call, you're alone again. And it's very strange.
Yeah. I would have thought I would prefer it too before all this, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't like doing stuff. I don't like going places. At least in my head, that's how I am. Well, I would have loved the idea of, oh, you don't have to play any shows. You don't have to go on tour. You don't have to leave your house. You can just be cozy and like eat and lay around and then do all this stuff. But now I'm realizing how much I really desperately need all those things that I thought I resented.
Right? Because I feel similarly, where it's like I used to resent having to go to like social engagements and things like that. Like I'm like, oh, I'm so introverted. I just want to hang out by myself.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I feel like my introvert battery is like so charged that it's glowing at this point.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you know, you need both. I mean, every extroverts, introverts need people.
yeah.
Like a different way of doing it. Like I just need to recharge a little bit. I need to be alone after I'm not, but I can't just be alone.
Exactly. And even like I miss ambient socializing. Like I would take like books to some of my favorite cafes around LA where I really, really like sometimes, I mean, I'll read at home obviously anyway, but it's like I like taking my books out and about. Where is that like quote social? But it's around other human beings and it's in a different setting. It's like
it removes, it kind of makes you feel anonymous, which I miss that. Because I do not feel like that. All I'm doing is thinking about myself and thinking about my problems and how I feel and what's happening and blah, blah, blah. I'm so sick of it.
Yeah. To not have that, like you said, that anonymity where it's like I'm so steeped in my own identity and my own thing here that it's like I can't necessarily step out of myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like I'm very capable of doing that no matter where I am or who is around me. But like I used to go to like the food court. I love a food court. and I wouldn't even eat. I would just sit there for hours. And it's not like I wasn't just sitting there thinking about all kinds of bullshit.
Right.
But there was some other thing about it. I don't
Yeah.
know. I was still out. I was still around people, you know. But now it's like, I don't know, it can get so dark so quickly. And the spiral, there's like no, maybe it just being outside just felt like a little bit of a net or something. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like that. I feel like really rootless, and like if I'm on one, there's no real way to come back from it unless it's me. And I'm not the one that is gonna bring myself back, you know?
Mhm.
So I realize that. I've always kind of known that. Like I like being alone when I know I'm not going to be. I like doing whatever I want only if it's like rebellious.
Yes.
So you know, I like being alone and doing whatever I want, but Alan's in the other room or something. But now that he's gone, like I know it's gonna get weird in here. It always does. I ended up putting
Mhm.
blankets over the windows and listening to like metal and stuff, which is fun, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you're like, well, when my parents are gone, I'm just going to like eat ice cream the whole time and run around in my underwear. And then you do that and you're like, I kind of feel queasy and I'm in my underwear, but I guess I'll keep going.
Yeah. And I already do that anyway. What I mean. I have always done that.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad that you got your body of work out about being embodied prior to us all being disembodied.
No, I'm on, you know, it's sad, but it's available. Like I know that it's there, you know.
Yeah.
And I got sick. I got sick. But knowing what feeling healthy was like, I mean, it made a big difference.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't there, but just knowing that it's available, knowing my body can do that, knowing that I can feel good. So when I feel bad, I don't think it, you know, it doesn't feel gone.
I was going to say it's that reminder of like, you might feel bad right now, but it's not forever. Like you also know that there's the flip side.
Yeah.
Aww.
Even with all the craziness of everything mentally, like I know that there's an anchor somewhere. I'm going to come back to it, but I don't enjoy not having it, but at least I'll figure it out at some point.
I just nodded sagely. I don't know if you could hear that nod. I was just like, yeah.
What's going on? I mean, there's just so much. It just feels overwhelming all the time, and it always has felt like that to me. But I don't know.
It's very strange all of a sudden welcoming people who aren't generally overwhelmed to the overwhelmed boat. I'm sometimes like, welcome.
Oh God,
Here's
yeah.
your t-shirt.
For me, for tips on how to be like crazy. Isolated or like how do you do this? How do you not do anything? Because I'm like the king of just like fuck it, who cares? I do nothing. And I'm the opposite now. I'm like, how do you do stuff? How do you motivate yourself to do stuff? Because now that I am not supposed to do anything, I want to. It's really weird.
Well, it sounds like that whole like push-pull of you want to do things because it's forbidden. And now you're like, now I want to do things. Whereas when someone's like, do something, you're like, I don't want to.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely do not want to do any of the things I'm supposed to.
Of course.
Definitely.
Almost like tricking yourself into the illicit.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading Esther Perel's, her book about mating in captivity. And it was definitely that where it's like our desire is often for the unknown or the dangerous or the risk and the novelty. But then we crave intimacy, which is like the known and the comfortable. Mm-hmm. But those are at odds with each other. And so it's like you almost have to trick yourself sometimes to desire things that you already have.
Yeah, I think that's why I loved the element of fantasy and performance in the dance, because it felt like those two things existing at the same time. Ooh. And in a way that almost felt creepy to me because I didn't know if it was okay to do. Mm-hmm. You know, there's other people there. But I loved that it was built in, you know, because I felt close to these people, but then I also knew that I was projecting closeness. But it was both. And so you can, it felt like a real harmony. And me and Kate developed a really intense relationship that was pretty wild. But I knew that we were really into it being intense and wild. And so we were sort of like hyping each other up and
yes,
and like curating it. But it was also real, And sometimes those things feel very different and in a way that's kind of crushing. And I loved that I had someone that was, we were letting each other be that way.
I love that you were there to like hold each other and also like push each other on that.
Mm-hmm.
To be like, you're safe.
Yeah.
Also, let's go over here. Let's go further.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. When you find those connections, I'm like, that's magic. That's whatever, the magic, the energy, the woo-woo, I'm like that. It's that thing.
Well, it felt really naughty because we were supposed to be working, but it felt like we were feeling too. So, but that's what's so fun to me. Performing feels, I don't know. That's all I want, is I want to actually feel that way, but be on stage, I don't want to mimic it or get close to it. I want to actually
feel it. And I love that it feels naughty.
Really blurry, like work and doing, making these weird, fantastical things, but having them actually feel real too. And I don't know. And I enjoyed it. I don't think I've ever really enjoyed it before. So.
Well, and I feel like in a way it's a false dichotomy to say something is work versus feeling. It's like you found a way to meld the two of them, and that sounds like just amazing alchemy right there.
It was, but it's also very different than how I normally work because I'm used to having a lot of pushback. And that's where I feel like the work is coming from, is when, like what I want is tempered.
Right.
And so if I'm just getting what I want, I was like, is this terrible? Like, I have no idea, is this good or bad? I mean, are people going to want to watch this? Because all I'm doing is what I want.
Oh my God. It's like, I want everything and nothing at the same time. Mm-hmm. Oh, I was like, I feel bad that I'm like, you've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate you talking to me.
Sure.
I was like, I want to keep talking about this, but also I don't want to like take up your whole afternoon because that seems selfish.
You talking about teriyaki and then it got me, and now I'm just hungry.
Yeah, that actually did get me hungry.
Hunger was flaring in the room. I'm ordering food right now.
That is such a good decision. I'm like, I should probably low-key do that. I'm like, did I eat today? I'm like, no, I did the dumb thing. I did the thing where I forgot to eat.
Yeah, you gotta eat.
I should probably go do that.
Okay.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm glad that you're in LA, and I'm sorry that I couldn't invite you over for like...
All good. Next time.
Well, yeah, thank you again.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of the day.
You
good
too.
Rest of the meals.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of Why Not Both. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and on Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who is literally a rock star. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next episode.